Welcome to Family Law Talk. Family Law Talk. Presented by Kirk Stange of Stange Law Firm, PC. Stange Law Firm is a multi-state family law firm. Now, here's your host, Kirk Stange.
Welcome to Family Law Talk. We have an interesting topic today. The topic is, can my lawyer go to mediation? And this episode today is based on an article on our blog, familylawheadquarters.com, dated January 19th, 2026. And the title of the article is, Can I Bring My Lawyer to Family Law Mediation? So as a follow-up to the episode today, go on over to familylawheadquarters.com and read this article for more information. But let's go ahead and jump into the topic at hand. Mediation is common in divorce and family law matters. In many cases, the court orders parties to go to mediation. In other cases, the parties may voluntarily agree to participate in mediation in an effort to resolve their case outside of court. But a big question that comes into play in a lot of situations is, can I bring my lawyer to family law mediation? All right. The reality is this is a question that comes up a lot. It's something people think about. It's something people contemplate. And it's a worthy topic and one I wanted to cover in the episode today. Okay, in many mediations, particularly court-ordered mediations, parties may go to the mediation alone without their lawyer, which I think is sort of an interesting dynamic. So a party hires a lawyer for a divorce or family law matter, but then there's mediation, typically court-ordered mediation, and then you have the parties going alone to meet with the mediator to discuss the case, okay? And so in a lot of these circumstances, the expectation is that the parties are going to go alone, and they're not going to bring their lawyer with them to the mediation itself. And yeah, I don't know. You know, this is a common belief, and I think this is what a lot of mediators want, and this is what a lot of lawyers will tell their client, go to the mediation alone. You don't need me there. And the idea is that the parties will sit down with the mediator and they'll discuss the issues in the case, and it's going to be different based on the type of case. But take a divorce where there's kids and there's assets, and then the idea is what? The parties are going to go there with the mediator, and they're going to work out child custody, and they're going to divide all their property and debt, and they're going to reach a resolution on child support, spousal support, and all the issues in the case. And then the case will just be done. Okay, I think this is sort of the idea. And from my vantage point, in being a divorce and family lawyer a long time, I mean, this mindset is really kind of based on a viewpoint. And the viewpoint is that divorce and family law case resolution is really pretty simple, and that parties ought to be able to just divide everything in half, do a custody agreement that works for both parties, move on with their life, resolve their case, and you don't need a lawyer to do any of this stuff, okay? From my vantage point, I mean, I've heard this for years, and I understand and I get it. Look, in some cases, this can actually work. I mean, I've seen cases where parties go to a mediator alone, and they work out their case amicably. But from my vantage point, the instances, at least where I've personally seen it, are cases where it's a very short-term marriage, there's no kids, there's no assets, so there's really not a whole lot on the table. But from my vantage point, in cases where there's kids, where there's a lot of assets, I personally have not seen a lot of success with the idea of sending my client into mediation alone with the mediator, and that a resolution is going to be reached. From my vantage point, I've seen a lot of parties go there and they walk away frustrated that there is no agreement, okay? So this comes down to the fundamental question, which is, why is going into mediation alone without a lawyer risky? Okay, again, from my vantage point, in cases where there's kids, where there's significant assets, there's ongoing financial obligations like child support, spousal support, from my vantage point, going into mediation alone can be really risky. And I've had a lot of clients through the years that don't want to do this. I mean, like, they want me to be there with them. And I think a lot of the listeners probably say, well, why? Why do they want their lawyer there with them? Because they don't even know what's fair. They're not lawyers, so they don't know what a fair resolution is in terms of dividing property and debt. Not all clients are financially minded. They're not sophisticated in this all the time, so they don't even know what's fair, and they don't know what details should be in a parenting plan in order to adequately address child custody, and they want their lawyer there just to advise them of the pros and the cons and what's fair and what's reasonable, and to make sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and there's not going to be any issues if they agree to settle their case in mediation. So look, from my vantage point, for a lot of parties, if there's significant assets or even a fair amount of assets and they have kids, I mean, not having the mediator allowing the attorneys to show up with their clients, I don't know. I just don't see a whole lot of success in these cases settling. And I've had lots of clients who've gone to these mediations alone saying, look, I didn't agree to anything at the end because I just wasn't comfortable agreeing without you being there. Okay? And so then this comes down to sort of another fundamental question, which is, why do some mediators prefer that the lawyers not attend? And you know, truthfully, why do some courts maybe prefer that the lawyers not attend and that the parties just go into mediation alone? Look, I mean, I think the idea is noble. I mean, I think the idea is not, you know, it doesn't come with bad motivations or anything like this, but the idea is that, look, parties ought to be able to sit down, discuss their differences, resolve them, come to an agreement, and that this is a good thing. And if parties are able to do this, then they'll be able to co-parent with each other, or they'll be able to move on with their life and not be bitter. And I hate to say this, but the other viewpoint I think that's out there is, I think some folks assume if the lawyers show up, they're going to muck everything up. Like, they'll make things more adversarial, more contentious. They'll tell their client not to settle, these kinds of things. And I, you know, respectfully, I disagree with this mindset. I mean, I guess it's possible some lawyers could do this, but look, most lawyers, most decent, good, honorable lawyers are not going to do this. They're just going to advise their client about what's fair, what's reasonable, and make sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. They're not coming there to muck it up. They're coming there because they were hired to give their client advice. And it's a little bit scary as a lawyer if your client goes in and agrees to a bunch of stuff, and you as a lawyer think, goodness gracious, that's a terrible idea, and this could result in future disputes down the line. And so as a lawyer, I think good, decent, honorable lawyers, you know, want to advise their client. That way their client comes away with an outcome that's good for them, right? Most lawyers are not going to show up to the mediation to muck things up and to make things complicated. Or, you know, some people think, oh, the lawyer's going to come there to mess up the settlement so the case will be dragged out and they can make more in fees. And I just, look, I think most lawyers are good, honorable, decent people, and that's not the reason any lawyer would want to come to the mediation. They want to come, in theory, to make sure their client's good and a fair deal. And from my vantage point, I can just say, I mean, personally, I've had lots of clients that were just like, look, I'm not going to be comfortable settling without you there. So I would say the chances of a settlement, a meaningful settlement that's actually implemented, is better, in my opinion, if I were at these mediations than if I were not. If I weren't at these mediations, I mean, my viewpoint has been most clients go there and they say, well, I did the 2 hours or whatever I was required to do, but I wasn't comfortable settling without you being there. All right, here's some other issues as well. Cases where there's power imbalances or safety concerns. In a lot of marriages, there's one party who's sort of dominant in terms of personality, in terms of pressuring the other party, maybe putting some duress on the other party, strong-arming the other party. And in cases like this, I think it's really dangerous for a party then to go into the mediation by themselves. I mean, they could be pressured. They could feel strong-armed into settling, and then they have buyer's remorse after the fact. And so that's another big reason, you know, the clients just sort of going to the mediation alone without their lawyer. I personally think it's not a good idea in a lot of circumstances, okay? And then you get safety concerns. I mean, let's be honest. In divorce and family law, there can be domestic violence in cases, there can be significant risk. So the two parties showing up to the mediation alone, particularly if it's in person and it's not like a Zoom or something like that, so they're walking into the mediator's office alone, they got to sit in the lobby alone, and then they're going to go in a settlement, settlement meetings in a conference room, just them and the other party and the mediator. I think, you know, for a lot of parties, that's going to be pretty intimidating. So for a lot of parties who are not real assertive, who can kind of crumble easily, then they can go into these mediations, settle, take a really bad deal because there's a power imbalance and they just didn't feel safe even being there, particularly if they're a victim of domestic violence in the past. And so from that vantage point, you know, I don't think it's good either. All right. So look, a lot of courts are going to order mediation. It's going to be court ordered. And it's going to be different by the state. It's going to be different by the jurisdiction according to the local rules or whatnot. But sometimes a court will order the parties to go to mediation. They might need to attend for a certain length of time and do their best. And if that's the case, the parties need to attend. But if there's a way to bring the lawyer that they've hired to give them legal advice with them, I mean, I think that's a good idea if they can do it. If they absolutely are not allowed to do it, and I've seen cases where the mediators do not want the lawyers to appear, then it's like there need to be, measures put into play if they have a safety concern. And I think, look, if parties aren't comfortable settling without their lawyer being there, I think it's fair for most parties, even if they like what's being discussed, to say, look, this looks pretty positive, and I'm potentially open to this settlement deal, but I want to talk with my lawyer first before I definitively agree to it. And I think that's fair. I mean, parties in a divorce or family law matter need to have the opportunity to consult with their lawyer. And look, that said, from my vantage point with the court-ordered mediations, again, I think it's good. It's a good idea. It's good in theory. But being a lawyer a long time, I have never had many clients go the mediation alone and reach a comprehensive settlement. From my vantage point, at best, it just sort of starts the conversation and it starts the dialogue. But I've seen very few cases settle at a court-ordered mediation where the parties went, without their lawyer. And I guess I'll say this in terms of just sort of one final piece. And to me, this is sort of obvious, but I don't know why it's not obvious to a lot of people, which is, look, if parties could just sit down and resolve their differences and come to agreements on issues easily in a short period of time without their lawyers present, they probably wouldn't be getting divorced, right? I mean, divorce happens in a lot of cases because parties don't compromise well. They can't enter agreements. And so I think that marriage ends up breaking apart. I mean, this isn't the only reason for divorce, but in a lot of divorces, at least the ones I've seen, the communication is a big issue, the disagreement's a big issue. And in a lot of cases, parties' emotions are very high at the beginning of a case when parties split up or break up. So like this idea that the parties are just going to sit down and settle this quickly and move on with their life, yeah, that makes sense. It's perfect in theory. But from my vantage point, it's not reality in a lot of cases, okay? So again, an interesting topic, one I wanted to cover. Can I bring my lawyer to mediation? Can I not bring them to mediation? Definitely an interesting topic, one I wanted to discuss here today. So as a follow-up to the episode today, go on over to familylawheadquarters.com. Read the article titled, Can I Bring My Lawyer to Family Law Mediation? The date of the article is January 19th, 2026. That'll be a good follow-up for you. But thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned to our next episode of Family Law Talk coming up. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Family Law Talk with Kirk Stange. Visit StangeLawFirm.com for more about today's topic or to put Stange Law Firm to work for your family today. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely on advertisements. Neither the Supreme Court of Missouri or Illinois reviews or approves certifying organizations or specialist designations. The information you obtained in this podcast is not, nor is it intended to be, legal advice. You should consult an attorney for advice regarding your individual situation. We invite you to contact us and welcome your calls, letters, and electronic mail. Contacting us does not create an attorney-client relationship. Please do not send any confidential information to us until such time as an attorney-client relationship has been established. Past results afford no guarantee of future results, and every case is different and must be judged on its own merits. Kirk Stange is responsible for the content. Headquarters, Office 120 South Central Avenue, Suite 450, Clayton, Missouri 63105. Kirk Stange is licensed in Missouri, Illinois, and Kansas.